everyone, a very good evening. I hope I'm visible, audible. Hello Gloria, hi Nilesh, good evening Chahat, hi Rehan, good evening. Hello Tarun, hi Piyush, hi Yuno, hello Srishti, good evening. How are you all? How is the prep going? So I hope the previous session gave you some insight into the ancient philosophical world, right? Into who Socrates was, who Plato was, who Aristotle was, right? And because philosophy is so vast, I did not want to cover all the philosophers in a jiffy with you in a hurry. That would be counterproductive in my opinion, right? So today also, what I have, I tried my best. So I thought that today I will, complete this, at least the philosophy part. And therefore, I have tried to cover the medieval period with you and the Renaissance period, the age of reason and enlightenment. But I could not cover the entire modern period, okay, because there are simply a lot of philosophers towards the 19th and 20th centuries, okay. So I think we will be able to finish till the age of reason and enlightenment today. Yes, do you remember this timeline? We saw this the last time. All right. Hi Astha. Hello Sayan. Okay, some of you remember this. Absolutely. So when we talked about the ancient period, we talked about some basically how philosophy came about. We talked about the father of Western philosophy, Socrates, his student Plato, his student Aristotle, and then I also told you that Alexander the Great was the student of Aristotle then, right? So we had this ancient period where we had the pre-Socratic period, the Socratic period, then we had the which period? Hellenistic period, which was when Alexander the Great was kind of ruling a lot of parts in Europe, right? His ideas spread far and wide. So Greece was therefore very prominent in Europe, okay, till this time. However, what happened after this? Alexander the Great died, and he hadn't left any major successor, so to say. So the Roman Empire was established in its place, right? So the Greek Empire, the Hellenistic Empire first fragmented, then fell to the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire was established. They borrowed a lot of ideas from the Greeks, so we have a lot of philosophies in common there as well, like Stoicism, Epicureanism, what we talked about. Okay, and then what happened? Did the Roman Empire go on forever? No. Okay, so here's this meme that I found to talk about it. That could be relevant for our purposes. So hard times create strong men. So we could here relate it with the strong men of the Greek Empire, Alexander, and the strong men also of the Roman Empire. So this then results into good times, right? So you can see. I can see architecture flourishing, trade flourishing, culture flourishing in the second panel. But good times create weak men. So the Roman Empire, which was established, what happened? It fell into complacency, corruption. Okay, there were these big parties, banquets. Okay, and there was little work that was going on. So ultimately, the Roman Empire also fell. So weak men create hard times. So this is where our story will begin today. Okay, the hard times. Okay, so I hope. Okay, so please do this that do watch the previous session as well, because this is connected, isn't it? So while the things that I tell you today will be clear to you by themselves as well, but it will become richer if you have an understanding of the ancient period also. Okay, so we had reached till the 5th century AD last time. Yes, I hope you remember this, the 5th century AD. So that means I am talking about the 400s, right? So now we come to this is an overlap here. So 5th to 10th century is what is called the dark ages in European history, the hard times. Yes, and in these hard times and beyond, we are going to ask such difficult questions. Can we ever know the truth? Something that we have been asking from the last class. Can we ever know the truth? Plato said yes, there are universal truths. We may or may not be able to know them, but there are universal truths. Then, where does knowledge come from? Oh my god, this question is so prominent even in your RC passages. Whenever a passage talks about epistemology, where does it come from? And can it guide the way we live? So these are some questions that we are going to ask starting from these hard times. Yes, epistemology. Rome wasn't built in a day. Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely, absolutely. Ankit is asking if Indian philosophy is inspired by the West. It could actually be the other way around as well, right? It's just that the Western philosophy has become a dominant narrative because a lot of texts from the Western period were preserved, and because the world became a Eurocentric world, Western ideas traveled far and wide, and that's why we know mainly Western ideas. Otherwise, a lot of people say that some of the Eastern philosophies, they came much before the Western philosophies. It's just that they weren't as popular. They still aren't as popular. Okay. Anyway, so let's begin with today's session, the hard times, called the Dark Ages. Yes. So tell me, why were they called the Dark Ages? You must have read this in your history books, I'm very sure. Yes, Astha, absolutely. Aristotle believed in certainty. You're absolutely right. So, different philosophers had different opinions, and this is one question that has guided a lot of philosophers. Can we know the truth? Some of them say yes, some of them say no, some of them say there are limits. So, Aristotle's, okay, all right. So the Dark Ages, basically once the Roman Empire fell, there was of course political fragmentation, a lot of small kingdoms emerged, right? Then there was also economic decline. This is the dominant interpretation of the Dark Ages. But now increasingly a lot of historians, they are uncovering that actually the Dark Ages were not really dark, right? They were not really dark as it is thought of, because a lot of culture, a lot of philosophy was preserved, right? So in monasteries, then the Byzantine Empire was there, okay, around modern day Turkey, some parts of Greece, Italy. The Byzantine Empire did exist during this time, 5th to 10th century. And it wasn't like nothing was happening, right? Philosophy was preserved. In fact, something was happening to the classical philosophy. It was being adapted in a way. In what way? So before I tell you that, there's a question that I want to ask. Can reason and faith, coexist? Yes. Tell me. Can reason and faith coexist? What do you say? Suryan says yes. Aryan says no. Okay. Srishti also says no. Alright. But I think if we look around ourselves, people follow different religions also in today's world. And people are governed by reason as well, right? We do believe in science as well. So I think they can coexist. The problem arises when we try to reconcile the two. When we try to say that, oh, faith is rational or faith is governed by reason. When I start saying such things, that is when problem arises. Right? Okay. So, the Dark Ages were a time when some people whom we know as saints today, so this is Saint Augustine, Saint Boethius, what they tried to do, they tried to reconcile the classical philosophy, the philosophy of Plato, Aristotle, with religion. And in Europe, with Christianity. We are talking about Christianity in Europe. So they tried to prove how religion is also governed by reason, and therefore more and more people should believe in it. Okay, so for example, Saint Augustine, if you remember, we talked about Neoplatonism last time, that Plato's ideas were reinterpreted and a religious angle was brought into them. That religion, through religion, or through a mystical contemplation, meditation, we could reach the one. The one basically represents a higher power, right? So Saint Augustine had this Neoplatonic influence. Okay, he studied Neoplatonism in Milan, Italy, and then he converted to Christianity. So he said that this one is actually a Christian God, and by following the religion of Christianity, you can reach this higher understanding. You can reach this one. So while Plato, from whom these ideas are coming, Plato never talked about religion. Okay, so Plato, rather, when he talked about his theory of forms, if you remember from the last class, Plato said that there are these higher forms, concepts, if you will, we can call them concepts of justice, beauty, and these concepts don't exist in the material world. They are not made up of matter. They are higher, they exist on a higher plane, and you can reach this conceptual understanding through reason. Okay, you can reach it through philosophical reasoning. That's what Plato said. But now look at how we are reinterpreting it here. We have this bishop here. Saint Augustine was a bishop, and he said that, you know what? This higher form, these forms, these higher concepts, they are actually God, a Christian God, and you can reach this through religious, you can reach here through religious understanding, through following religious principles. Okay, so this is what was happening in the Dark Ages. However, again, not entirely dark, I would say, because a lot of classical philosophy was preserved also, which helped later on when Renaissance came, right? So even though these ideas were reinterpreted in a religious context, these ideas of Plato and Aristotle, they survived. Okay, they survived. So this guy Boethius, so just like Augustine took the ideas of Plato and Christianized them, similarly Boethius took the ideas of Aristotle and tried to again Christianize them. He also took some Stoicism ideas, Stoic ideas, and Christianized them. So a lot of Christianization was happening during this time. And some people think that, in a way we went backward, because from various myths, from various supernatural explanations, we had come to philosophy of Socrates, Aristotle, Plato. And somehow some people think that we are going back now, because we are going back to religious explanations, right? Hence perhaps this reference to the Dark Ages. So far so good. Byzantine Empire was an empire that survived and was established around the modern day Turkey and surrounding areas, parts of Greece, parts of Italy, right? So Constantinople was its capital, which is our modern day Istanbul. Constantinople is Istanbul. Okay. It's an idea from Aristotle's philosophy. Yes, Aristotle was to a large extent an empiricist, though not a pure empiricist. I will come to this idea, okay, when we discuss empiricism. Good question, Rihan. And so this is about what was happening in Europe, in the Middle East, so West Asia, North Africa. I hope the connection is fine. Yeah. I think there may have been a lag. Just a second. Is there a lag? It's fine. Okay. All right. So, okay, so I have actually connected to my LAN, and ideally on my LAN it should not lag, but it may be because there were heavy rains here last night. So it's possible. Okay, all right. So let's continue. And in the Middle East, what was happening was that in a similar way, there was an effort of reconciliation of Islam with philosophy. A similar effort to reconcile Islam with philosophy. Okay, so this is the Dark Ages. Now, let us have a look. Okay, I am not quite sure if it's lagging or not, and the thing is I can't do much about it because I'm already using my LAN. So you have to let me know when it is okay for me to continue. Okay, so let's talk about intellectual revival. Now this was just the first half of the Middle Ages, right? The medieval period. We have just talked about the first half of it, right? What about the next half? What happened there? So there we then experienced an intellectual revival. So what is intellectual revival? Tell me. When we again see a rebirth. So the idea of Renaissance is also an idea of revival. So this is a precursor to Renaissance. Okay. In fact, sometimes it is also called 12th century Renaissance. Sometimes it is also called 12th century Renaissance. Okay. So what happened here, that there was now the economic conditions, they became better gradually. The political climate became relatively more stable. Okay, so there was this one philosophy that came to fore known as Scholasticism. Yes, any idea what Scholasticism is? Scholasticism. So scholar, school, these words come from this movement itself, right? So scholasticism, so actually when there was this intellectual revival, a lot of universities, the first universities, Western universities came into being in Paris, in Bologna, right? And these universities, however, somehow accepted Christian orthodoxy. They accepted the Christian orthodox principles, laws, right? And but what again they were trying to do, they were again trying to reconcile. So this reconciliation continued. Aristotle with primarily the Catholic theology, Catholic religion, right? So in Christians also we have Catholics and Protestants. So primarily with Catholic theology, there was this effort at reconciliation. Also, in this spirit, there was this belief that Aristotle is superior to Plato. Aristotle's ideas became more prominent. Can you tell me why? Yes, anyone who can think why? Why would Aristotle be given more prominence in this spirit? So I think Astha mentioned it right in the beginning, that Aristotle said that we can find truths, okay, that while Plato said that there do exist universal truths, but we may or may not be able to know them, Aristotle said that we can know truths, okay, and there are certain truths, basically final truths that exist. So Aristotle was a guy who believed in certainty. And you know, the idea of religion is also to provide you with certainty. If you notice, what role does religion play in our lives? In an uncertain world, it provides us with some stability, some certainty. So that's why Aristotle's views were given preference over Plato's, because Plato's asked us to embrace uncertainty, right? So that's why there were a lot of efforts of reconciliation of Aristotle with Christian theology. Okay, right. Then, so this was the period, scholasticism as a movement, it happened primarily in Western universities, right? And there was this effort by university students, teachers to combine logic. So for example, They used syllogism, which was given by Aristotle. They also debated a lot, right? So a lot of debates happened, and these debates combined logic and language. Of course, in a debate we are talking to each other, isn't it? So a lot of debates about the nitty-gritty of things, okay, minute details were dissected. So logic and language played a big role, right? So tried to resolve the points of contention, debate, using logic and language. And when such a thing happens, when debates happen in a society, rhetoric plays a very important role. What is rhetoric? Yes. What is rhetoric? The art of influencing people through your language, right? So basically in rhetoric, we give very persuasive arguments. We try to persuade the other person through our language. That is rhetoric. So rhetoric played a big role. Okay, how good an orator you are, how good a debater you are, how convincing arguments you make. That played a very important role in not just what you are saying, but how you are saying it. That played an important role. So this spirit tried to combine logic, metaphysics, the questions of what exists beyond the physical world, knowledge, and semantics. So logic and language, debating happened. We tried to combine Christianity again with Aristotle's views. However, because these early universities, they simply accepted the church's orthodox views. They didn't challenge them. So that's why it was also criticized a lot, this scholasticism as a movement, because it was just accepting this dogma, these rigid principles. It was passively accepting this tradition without challenging it, right? Also, it was being very pedantic, what we call splitting hairs. So splitting hairs. So it was trying to do that, trying to find minute faults through debates. So that's why it was criticized for these aspects. Okay. Now, Thomas Aquinas was a prominent figure there. So I think this should be a band. This is perhaps fur. I don't think these are his hair, but okay, they could be. I could be wrong. Okay. In which case it's a very cool hairstyle. So Thomas Aquinas, you must have come across his name at maybe some or the other point in some RC passages. In fact, the names that I'm giving you today, for instance, Augustine. So, I don't want to give any hints, but you may encounter this name in some of the RC passages in the near future, those of us who are enrolled with us. Then, when I'm talking about Thomas Aquinas, this is a name that I have sometimes encountered in RC passages. He tried to synthesize, again, this thing, Aristotle with Christian theology, and he developed 5 ways to prove God's existence. Imagine. Somebody developed 5 ways to prove, not just to indicate, hint, imply, to prove God's existence. So he had his 5 principles, some of which he drew from Aristotle himself. Okay, and he said that we could prove God's existence. Of course, they have been challenged, right? What were the ways? Okay, interesting question. So one of them was that there is an unmovable mover. See, if everything is in motion, imagine that there are some balls, right, in front of you. Now, each is setting the other in motion, but there must be some first thing that is stationary and that is setting everything in motion. So the existence, the fact that everything is in motion must imply the existence of an unmovable mover, whom Thomas Aquinas called God. Similarly, look at it from another angle. This was the first way. The second was that, see, every effect has its own cause, right? Every effect has a cause behind it, isn't it? So if this is a causal chain, then there must be a first cause that is bringing everything about, that is bringing this chain about. So that first cause is God. Okay, the fact that everything around us is so perfect, the best things around us are so perfect, it points towards a perfect creator. The fact that they have such intricate design, it points towards an intelligent designer. So these were the ways. So motion, causation, existence, perfectness, and design. Okay. Basically the initial beginning. Absolutely, absolutely. Right. Yes, intelligent design, creationism, Priyanshu, it draws from there, and in fact they draw from Thomas Aquinas. I think Thomas Aquinas came before intelligent design, so intelligent design drew from Thomas Aquinas. Find out about intelligent design, your homework. So basically, all in all, the medieval period, it believed that, reason, what does it do? It serves faith. Reason serves and supports faith. That was the effort during this period. So a lot of Christianization happened, and in the Middle East, again, Islam was also trying to reconcile the religion with philosophy, classical philosophy. Aristotle became very, very prominent. Okay. RC tha iska. Okay. That's great. See, so everything that you're reading about in your RCs, it's actually coming from this story of Western philosophy. In philosophy RCs, this is where it comes from. Okay. Now, however, then what happened? This intellectual revival of the 12th century gradually gave way. Gradually, people sort of started questioning religion. Yeah, they felt that why are we accepting religion as it is? And there came a period of a lot of cultural, economic, architectural, artistic, philosophical flourishing. This period was called Renaissance. Re means again, nature means to be born. So rebirth, literally rebirth, revival. That is what Renaissance means. Okay. Now here, because we had accepted religion as very prime and supreme in our lives in the medieval period. However, in Renaissance, there was a move away from this religion and scholasticism. People said that, human beings, they started really valuing human dignity, human potential. Okay. And the fact that human beings have this individual agency through which they can accomplish things. So this was a human-centric time. Human beings were the centers of the universe, okay, in Renaissance. So that is why we call this period, the major philosophy of this period is humanism. Have you heard this term, humanism? It is different from humanity. Okay, so humanism is this belief in human dignity, potential, development of individual agency. Okay, so and of course, that is why in this period there was a lot of push towards liberal arts, because human beings were trying their potential in art, culture, various fields. Ethics, how humans should live, what their lives should be guided by. Rhetoric, how they can make persuasive arguments. So humans were the focus. Okay, ye bhi RC tha. See, I am so happy that whatever I'm telling you today, you have encountered this somewhere or the other. I'm just trying to, put it on a timeline for you, right? Trying to streamline it for you. Now, this was the time when we went back to classical philosophy, right? Wholesale. So we rediscovered Plato, Stoicism, Epicureanism. How, of course, it was reinterpreted in a humanist light. थोड़ा सा रीइंटरप्रिटेशन तो होगा ना, बिकॉज अब रेनेसेंस पर आ गए हम, ह्यूमंस पे फोकस है. सो उस टाइम का जो ट्रेंड था वो ह्यूमनिज्म था, उस टाइम का जो फैड था वो ह्यूमनिज्म था. सो दैट्स वाई all these philosophies, they were slightly reinterpreted in a humanist sense. Okay. A very, very prominent philosophy, of course, I know we have read about skepticism in the ancient period as well. So this had a resurgence, and again it was reinterpreted, because now skepticism was mainly seen as questioning the church, doubting whatever religion had been telling us. Okay, why should we just simply accept it passively? So skepticism questioned the church and all these beliefs that church of Aristotle that the church had incorporated. It started questioning it. Have you heard this SJ saying human is greater than God? In a way, basically the personal religious god. Yes, humans greater than the personal religious god. Yes. Have you heard this name, Michel de Montaigne? Montaigne's essays. Have you encountered this anywhere? Montaigne's essays, they are very popular. So Montaigne wrote essays, okay, where he talked about self-reflection and about doubting and challenging stuff. Okay, so he is associated with this resurgence of skepticism during Renaissance. Okay, and when we started questioning, when we started, in a way, questioning the authority, do you think that the church will accept it passively now? They'll take things lying down? Yes. Seneca's essays, yes. The church will not take it lying down. The church will retaliate. So, Renaissance, and it seems like, oh, that means that now we will all move towards a rational society. We will all move towards a scientific society, and somehow religion will adjust. Religion will not retaliate, but religion retaliated like anything. Okay, so I'm sure you know who Copernicus was. Just giving you an example. So Copernicus in the 1500s, he came up with this heliocentric model of our solar system. So Aristotle and Christianity both, they had this thing in common. They gave a geocentric model of our solar system. Geocentric matlab कि Earth is the center of the solar system. बट फिर कॉपरनिकस आया, उसने कुछ ऑब्जर्वेशंस करी और उसने कहा नहीं नहीं, अर्थ नहीं है सेंटर, सन, हीलियोस इज द सन इज द सेंटर. एब्सोल्युटली नीलेश, सन इज द सेंटर ऑफ द सोलर सिस्टम. सो चर्च ने पहले तो टॉलरेट कर ली ये बात. उन्हें लगा कितना ही फेमस होएगा ये, हमारी बात ही ज़्यादा मानेंगे. बट धीरे धीरे ये आइडिया काफ़ी फेमस होता गया, टू द पॉइंट दैट गैलीलियो फर्दर पॉपुलराइज्ड इट, राइट, एंड ही actually wrote a book in which he talked about this heliocentric model further. So now this became very, very popular, and they had earlier itself told Galileo when he was teaching this to his students that stop teaching this heliocentric model to your students. But Galileo didn't stop, and he went on to write a book on it. So what did the church do? They put him under house arrest for life. So the church responded sometimes in such ways, punishing ways, punitive ways. Okay, and this project of reconciliation of classical and Christian thought continued. It's not like कि हमने ये बिल्कुल ख़त्म ही कर दिया. medieval period में जो था ये भी चलता रहा, ठीक है. बस again उसको एक humanist twist देने लग गए. So now for example, this philosopher Erasmus, he said that we should go for a critical scholarship of the Bible. मतलब अब Bible सब पढ़ें, right? It shouldn't just be limited to priests. Everybody should read the Bible, and through a critical lens they should read it. Moreover, he said that the church needs certain moral reforms. So this reconciliation continued with a humanist twist, that we also started recognizing the pushback from the society, the new consciousness of society, the consciousness of humanism. Right? Okay. Now, I remember this has been mentioned. Yes, in Dan Brown's Angels and Demons. Correct. It's there, Aryan. So, have you heard of the Erasmus Mundus Scholarship? It's named after this guy, this Dutch philosopher Erasmus, because he traveled a lot. So Erasmus Mundus, the idea is that it attracts global scholars. That's why it's called Erasmus Mundus. Mundus means world. Okay, so far so good. Renaissance, what all happened? We went back to our classical ideas. It's like like fashion. Fashion returns after a while. The old fashion returns. So this happened here. It was reinterpreted. Okay, and finally we started moving away from religion, with pushback of course, but we started moving away. So Erasmus was an important figure of this time. Machiavelli किसने सुना है मैकियावेली का नाम? निकोलस मैकियावेली. He is called the Chanakya of the West. So he was a political strategist, okay, and he was quite a pragmatic one and also believed to be a little ruthless, okay. So in fact, have you heard this word Machiavellian? Machiavellian, this adjective, have you read it anywhere? ये एडजेक्टिव है, अभी भी है इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज में. इसका मीनिंग होता है somebody who is cunning. Yes, in especially in political matters, especially in politics, that person is called Machiavellian. So Machiavellian ने कहा देखो ends justify means. Yeah, that's what he said. I was about to say the opposite. Ends justify means. As long as आप जो ends achieve करना चाह रहे हो वो ठीक है ना, कोई भी means adopt कर लो उसके लिए. But this is a sort of a cruel argument, because what if the means involve murdering someone? Let's say I want the ultimate good of this society, but it involves murdering some people. Should I do it? As per Machiavelli, ends justify means. So perhaps you could do it. So he said, be pragmatic. Yeah, don't be idealistic. Ends justify means. Yes, ये लाइन इन्हीं की है, absolutely, Machiavelli की है, ठीक है. So this is, that's why he is considered cunning today. So Erasmus was a popular figure. ये religion से associated थे, ये politics से associated थे, और Francis Bacon ये science से associated थे. I think we talked about Francis Bacon in an RC passage in VRC gym. Do you remember? Those who attended? Knowledge is power. I told you this quote. Knowledge is power. This is Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon saying this. Yes. Absolutely, Simran. You remember the joke. So, Francis Bacon ने बोला knowledge is power, right? So, knowledge हमें एक systematic means develop करना चाहिए to acquire knowledge. And he gave what is known as the scientific method today. Of course, it's more refined now, but he was an early pioneer of the empirical method and the scientific method. So, empirical क्या होता है? क्या बोला होगा? Yes. Empirical is something that is based on observation. So, Francis Bacon ने बोला देखो, observe, collect data, observe and collect data. Then don't be in a hurry to draw conclusions. Okay, and use inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning means from some particular observations, when we arrive at general conclusions, we call it inductive reasoning. So use inductive reasoning to arrive at general laws. That's what he said. And does it sound familiar to you? Don't experiments happen this way? Doesn't a lot of research happen this way? It all begins with data collection, right? Then we analyze that data. We are not in a hurry to draw conclusions. Then we use inductive reasoning, that from these particular observations, we may say these general things. So Francis Bacon gave this empirical scientific method. Okay, so very popular guy. And in fact, if you've read Sapiens, so Yuval Noah Harari also talks about him in the chapter Scientific Revolution. Okay, so आने ही वाला है बस scientific revolution हमारी story में भी, ठीक है. So ये जो पूरा पीरियड है रेनेसेंस, इसका क्या फोकस था? इसका ये फोकस था दैट ह्यूमंस आर केपेबल ऑफ सीकिंग द ट्रूथ, ओके, एंड दे कैन क्वेश्चन अथॉरिटी. दे शुड क्वेश्चन अथॉरिटी. ओके, एंड व्हाई हैव आई पुट दिस मीम हियर? इस मीम का क्या रेलेवेंस है? टेल मी. रेनेसेंस में सब अनएम्प्लॉयड होते थे. इज दैट द केस? Yes, in Renaissance there was. And this clash will now fully develop in the age of reason and enlightenment. So basically, yes, Renaissance man is a term, it's an idiom that is used for somebody who's multi-talented. So instead of calling this person multi-talented, you can also say that this person is a Renaissance man. Sorry, something just happened to the pen. Yeah. So multi-talented. So here is an unemployed person saying, I'm overqualified for all jobs, you know. I'm a Renaissance man. Right? Okay. Superiority complex of some kind. Yes, yes, absolutely. This person has it in the meme. Okay, maybe their thoughts were too deep for any conclusion. Actually, conclusion, you know, conclusion हम certain, अगर जिस दिन हमने बहुत certain conclusions draw कर लिए, उस दिन philosophy का, academia का, knowledge का end हो जाएगा, isn't it? So that is why, you know, philosophy has always had this constant question, can we know the truth? And different people have said different things. Currently we are in this post-modernist era. अभी जो चल रहा है 21st century में, उसको post-modernist era बोलते हैं. और उसमें हम कहते हैं कोई एक truth नहीं होता. There are no absolute truths. There's my truth and there's your truth. So no, we can't know one single truth. In fact, it challenges this whole scientific method. कि ये ना पूरा scientific method ही जो है ये बहुत absolutist है. So yeah, different times and this question has continued and I think it will continue. Okay? So अब हम आ जाते हैं 17th और 18th centuries में. ठीक है? So कहाँ पर अभी तक हमने क्या बात करी? हम 5th century से पहले गए 15th century तक, ये पूरा था medieval period. फिर हमने बात करी Renaissance की. Okay? एंड अब हम आ गए हैं 17th और 18th सेंचुरी में, विच इज़ कॉल्ड द एज ऑफ रीजन एंड ऑल्सो द एज ऑफ एनलाइटनमेंट. ओके, सो क्या होगा इसमें? जस्ट टेक अ गेस. Initially the church was more powerful, SJ. Initially the church was more powerful, but then because a lot of revolutions started happening, it had to become more tolerant. Okay, so revolutions अब आ गए हैं, अब 17th और 18th century में ही हुए. Okay, so reason over faith. All right, yes, we could say that this is the age of reason. So as the name suggests, we are saying that reason is the supreme tool, not faith. If you want to understand the world, if you want to improve the world, your reason is the supreme tool. Then we increasingly saw, so Francis Bacon ने ये Renaissance के टाइम पर ही pioneer कर दिया था method, and we increasingly saw advances in science, empiricism and science, they replaced blind faith in authority in the 17th and 18th centuries. इतना smooth भी नहीं था ये process जितना इस slide पर लग रहा है. It took a lot of revolutions, right? We had the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, right? The Russian Revolution. So a lot of revolutions against monarchies, against church. Yeah. Liberty and equality as political ideals. तो ये जो ideas हैं ना, जो अभी भी इतने popular हैं in the consciousness of our day, even though right now the world is facing a right-wing wave, still these ideas are quite popular. Liberty and equality. These ideas were established. They shone. They started shining in this period. Renaissance ideas जो establish होके shine हो गए इस period में. Secularism, religious tolerance. So do you now see why I say that this is the modern period? ये सब familiar लग रहा है ना, ये सारी बातें तो हम अभी भी करते हैं. Liberty, equality, secularism, religious tolerance. Progress was a natural outcome of human effort. This was an idea of age of reason and enlightenment. Right? Myths break down हो जाएंगे. All right. Okay. It's in fashion. Yes, it's still in fashion, we could say. Then, is knowledge built by pure? So what was the central question of this time? A very central question and a popular subject of your philosophy RC passages as well. Is knowledge built by pure reason or purely from sensory evidence, what we perceive, our senses, what we see, smell, taste, touch. Okay, so नॉलेज कहाँ से आती है, हमारी सेंसेस से या हमारी रीजनिंग से, रीजन से? ये डिबेट था एक इस पीरियड में काफ़ी बड़ा. ठीक है, तो ये कौन है, कौन बताएगा मुझे? हु इज दिस पर्सन? सो प्रियांशु has already said reason. It doesn't have to be an either or, Priyanshu, as I'll just show you very briefly. This is Descartes. Absolutely. René Descartes. I think, therefore I am. The popular person who gave this quote. So rationalists कहते थे कि देखो knowledge कहाँ से आती है? रीज़न से. Okay. रीज़न मतलब आपकी थिंकिंग, आपका लॉजिक, आपकी इननेट आइडियाज़. कुछ आइडियाज़ हम पैदा होते हैं कुछ आइडियाज़ के साथ. वी आर बॉर्न विद सम आइडियाज़. ओके, दे आर इननेट. I just told you that nature means to be born, right? So innate, inborn ideas. So they said that we can know some truths a priori. A priori मतलब without experience. हमें उसके लिए experience की ज़रूरत नहीं है. कुछ चीज़ें हमें बस पता होती हैं. ठीक है, हमारी लॉजिक थिंकिंग के साथ. फॉर एग्जाम्पल 2 + 2 = 4 है. ये सबको पता है, मैथमेटिकल ट्रूथ है ना? सो no, I think therefore I am. Okay, cogito ergo sum. Cogito ergo sum. उसने ये कहा था ना. आरसी को डिफिकल्ट बना दिया इसने, बिल्कुल इसने और दरीदा ने. आई एग्री. सो अब जैसे कि हमें ये चीज़ पता है पहले से. इज इट दो? इज इट समथिंग दैट वी नो ए प्रायरी? बस मैंने बोला तो आप यस मत बोलो. सो सी हाउ अ चाइल्ड लर्न्स. अ चाइल्ड विल ग्रुप ऑब्जेक्ट्स. वो फिर ग्रुप करके उसको काउंट करके बोलता है, ओ 2 + 2 = 4, राइट? सो दिस वॉज चैलेंज्ड बाय एन एम्पेरिसिस्ट, डेविड ह्यूम. ठीक है, ये डेविड ह्यूम नहीं है, बट डेविड ह्यूम ने इसको चैलेंज किया था कि नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है. यू फर्स्ट नीड टू एक्चुअली see this. Let's say you saw these objects, okay, then you grouped them, so then you realized, okay, it's 4. So it's not that you know them a priori, you need a sensory experience. फिर कैंट भैया आए, इमैनुअल कैंट, और उन्होंने एक बहुत अच्छा आंसर दिया इसका. अभी आते हैं उस आंसर पे. ठीक है, सो आई होप फर्स्ट दिस इज क्लियर that this is what they believed in. They also felt that certain moral truths also, we are born with those moral truths. For example, we should not punish somebody innocent. So rationalists said कि ये तो पता ही होता है, ये कोई देखने की, ऑब्जर्व करने की ज़रूरत थोड़ी है. This is something that we know, that we shouldn't punish somebody innocent. But again, this is also quite contestable, quite controversial, right? So major figures of the time, René Descartes ने कहा हर चीज़ को डाउट करो, किसी भी चीज़ पे विश्वास मत करो. So when you wake up, doubt, is this my home? Yes. Should I live here? Is this my home? Okay. Are these my teeth? How do I know that these are my teeth? So just kidding. So René Descartes doubted everything. So he even doubted his own existence. क्या मैं exist करता हूँ? मुझे कैसे पता कि मैं exist करता हूँ? So Descartes said, I think, क्योंकि मैं सोच रहा हूँ इस टाइम. ठीक है, thinking requires a thinker. I am thinking right now. Thinking requires a thinker. So I think, therefore I am. This is what Descartes said. Okay. Yes, absolutely, Aryan. That's what a day in Descartes' life must have looked like. Spinoza, ये भी काफ़ी famous rationalist है, right? So he said that God and nature ही God है. This is what he said. That God और nature अलग अलग नहीं है, nature ही God है. ठीक है, just a temporary power outage, it will come back. So I really like this idea that, he found God in nature. They are one infinite substance. You can't separate the two. Then this guy Leibniz, not the Lebanese food, Leibniz said universe is made of spiritual building blocks. अच्छा, तो किसको याद है हमारी पिछली क्लास से डेमोक्रिटस? Yes, paganism, absolutely, very related to paganism. Spinoza's ideas. Tell me. Democritus nobody remembers from the last class. He said yes. उसने पहले ही बता दिया था कि यूनिवर्स जो है हमारा पूरा वो छोटे छोटे मटेरियल पार्टिकल्स का बना हुआ है. इट्स मेड अप ऑफ स्मॉल मटेरियल पार्टिकल्स. बट Leibniz came and said, no, it's not made up of small material particles. It's made up of small spiritual building blocks. Okay, he called them monads. So small spiritual building blocks. So that's what the universe is made up of. So do you see that in this spirit? Okay, so let's just look at Spinoza and Leibniz. It's not like we have abandoned a spiritual discussion or a discussion about God. ऐसा नहीं हो रहा. एज ऑफ रीजन एंड एनलाइटनमेंट में भी, रेनेसेंस में भी ऐसा नहीं हुआ. सो डिस्कशन अभी भी हो रही है. जस्ट दैट द इंक्वायरी इज बिकमिंग मोर सेक्युलर. डू यू सी दैट? द इंक्वायरी हैज बिकम मोर सेक्युलर इन नेचर. इट्स नो लॉन्गर अबाउट अ क्रिश्चियन गॉड, राइट? सो दैट वॉज अ चेंज. अब रैशनलिस्ट ने तो ये बोल दिया कि देखो सब कुछ रीजन के थ्रू हम जानते हैं. बट देखो अभी अभी बेकन ने कहा था नो, फर्स्ट वी कलेक्ट डेटा, वी नो थिंग्स थ्रू आवर ऑब्जर्वेशन, राइट? सो ही वॉज एक्चुअली एन अर्ली एम्पेरिसिस्ट. बेकन वॉज एन अर्ली एम्पेरिसिस्ट. नाउ लेट्स कम टू दिस फिलॉसफी. जो ये झगड़ा हो रहा था रैशनलिज्म और एम्पेरिसिज्म का, इसमें कुछ फिलोसफर्स थे, उन्होंने कहा सी ऑल नॉलेज अल्टीमेटली कम्स फ्रॉम सेंसरी एक्सपीरियंस. हम अपनी सेंसेस से परसीव करते हैं, हम देखते हैं, हम सुनते हैं, उससे हमें नॉलेज आती है. रैशनलिस्ट कहते हैं अच्छा नॉलेज, आर सेंसेस कैन बी मिसलीडिंग. सेंसेस कैन बी मिसलीडिंग because of, for example, refraction of light, a straw in a glass of water appears broken. We have these illusions of optical illusions of mirage, etc. Our senses can be misleading. Rationalists said that. But empiricists said no, still knowledge ultimately has to come from sensory experience. For example, nobody is born with an innate idea of beauty. What is beautiful, what is not? It's not an innate idea. You observe in your surroundings, and through these multiple observations you then form a concept of beauty. है ना? So ये beauty. एक एग्जाम्पल है इसका एम्पिरिसिज्म का. रीजन वर्क्स ऑन. अब उसने बोला ऐसा देखो, एम्पिरिसिज्म was not that it was abandoning reason. इवन फ्रांसिस बेकन हियर, बेकन ने भी बोला था ना इंडक्टिव रीजनिंग यूज करो. इट्स नॉट लाइक दे आर सेइंग दैट हम रीजनिंग यूज ही नहीं करेंगे. क्या चल रहा है चैट बॉक्स में? अ थिंग ऑफ ब्यूटी इज अ जॉय फॉर एवर. यस, वर्ड्सवर्थ. सो एम्पिरिसिज्म ने ये बोला कि हम ठीक है, हम रीजनिंग यूज करते हैं, बट फर्स्ट वी कलेक्ट डेटा थ्रू आवर सेंसेस एंड देन रीजनिंग वर्क्स ऑन दैट डेटा. रीजनिंग सिंपली क्या करती है, उस डेटा पर वर्क करती है. इंडक्टिव रीजनिंग. सो यू नो व्हाट, these people believed in inductive reasoning, whereas rationalists believed in deductive reasoning. And what do we know today? Both are required, isn't it? Both are needed. So the major figures of this time, John Locke, who said, अरे हमारा mind तो at birth is a tabula rasa. It's a blank or a clean slate. We then fill it with our observations. Berkeley आया, उसने बोला to be is to be perceived. सारे जो physical objects हैं वो exist करते हैं क्योंकि हम उन्हें perceive कर रहे हैं. Okay, so to be is to be perceived. And Hume, जिसने लड़ाई करी थी अब against this idea, Hume ने बोला, see, all these ideas of self, cause, morality, they are not born of reason. They come from habit and sentiment, not reason alone. Right? So, for example, our notion of self, मैं कौन हूँ, ये हम धीरे धीरे build करते हैं ना, from our observations, okay, from our sentiments. They're not born of reason alone. So what they are saying also makes sense, empiricists. Right? So rationalism, this is John Locke, Okay, this is John Locke, and these people, they were fighting. तब आए हमारे कैंट भैया. कैंट भैया ने कहा देखो लड़ना बंद करो, इट्स नॉट एन आइदर और के वर्ल्ड में नहीं है हम, दे कैन बी कंबाइंड. यस, Berkeley का भी RC है. So we have introduced you to all of these philosophers. It's just that while they may be a little haphazard in your mind, I am just putting a timeline to it. Okay. In fact, he's Berkeley, is it? Okay, I've put so many pictures today. Could be Berkeley. Just a second. Let me just tell you. I've recently picked up this picture. Anyway, I'll tell you that, but there's one thing that I want to share. Yes, so again ऐसा नहीं है that अभी भी God की बात होनी बंद हो गई. See, the discussion of God has continued even in empiricism, because Berkeley, see, if Berkeley is saying कि कोई भी जो physical object है वो exist करता है क्योंकि हम उसे perceive कर रहे हैं. Yes, we are perceiving it. So does that mean if tomorrow living organisms or if humans stop existing, then that object also will vanish? Does that mean that? Tell me. बताओ. अगर चीज़ें एग्जिस्ट इसलिए कर रही हैं क्योंकि हम उन्हें परसीव कर रहे हैं, हम उन्हें देख रहे हैं, सुन रहे हैं, टेस्ट कर रहे हैं, टच कर रहे हैं, सो विल दे स्टॉप एग्जिस्टिंग व्हेन वी वैनिश? एज पर बर्कली स्टेटमेंट दैट शुड हैपन. सो बर्कली ने इसका क्या सोल्यूशन निकाला? बर्कली सेड, बट यू नो व्हाट, गॉड इज परसीविंग अस एट ऑल टाइम्स. So even when everybody vanishes, because God is perceiving everything at all times, physical objects will still remain. So the discussion about God was still happening, but in a more secular manner, right? It's like God की एक ये universe God की एक live stream है, right? Or it's like a live stream in front of God. That is what George Berkeley was trying to say, right? So now Kant came and he said you can have both, you don't have to choose. Okay, see, whenever we, and he gave a very nuanced argument. I really like Kant as a philosopher because his arguments are very nuanced. He said that, you know, whenever we look at a thing, first is how that thing appears to me, the way I perceive that thing, my perception. Okay, then I also then organize, categorize, understand that thing. फिर मैं उसको समझती हूँ अपने रीज़न के थ्रू. ठीक है. एंड इन दोनों में ही, ये दोनों ही लिमिटेड चीज़ें हैं, बिकॉज ह्यूमन बींग्स आर लिमिटेड इन देयर बिकॉज दिस इज माई परसेप्शन एंड माई अंडरस्टैंडिंग, एंड बोथ कैन बी लिमिटेड, राइट? सो it is quite possible that the thing in itself, what he called noumena, is different from the way I am perceiving it and I am understanding it, right? For example, colors सब लोग हम अपनी ह्यूमन आई वेवलेंथ के अकॉर्डिंग परसीव करते हैं. फिर मे बी उस कलर के अराउंड मैंने कुछ अंडरस्टैंडिंग भी बनाई, बट इट डज नॉट मीन दैट दैट थिंग इन इट सेल्फ, मुझे वो जिस कलर की दिख रही है वो एक्चुअली में उस कलर की है. सो he said this. So he said that there are these three aspects to everything that we observe. First is the way we perceive it, the way we understand it, and the third thing is that thing in itself, which we may never be able to know because we are limited in our capacities, in our faculties. Okay. Also, Kant was boring. Did I say that? No. I said Kant followed strict routines in his life. There is a difference. Okay. So, Kant, he was so punctual and he followed the same routines in his life every day. He was so punctual that people in his town set their clocks according to his movements, his routine. अच्छा, Kant अब घर से बाहर निकल रहा है, 9 बजे होंगे. Okay, I didn't say he was boring. Right. So, कैटेगोरिकल इम्पेरेटिव, कैंट का ये मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है, कैटेगोरिकल इम्पेरेटिव. ही सेज दैट, यू नो, ऐसे ही हमें बिहेव करना चाहिए जो we should behave according to that principle, that tomorrow we will be comfortable if it becomes a universal principle, right? So मुझे किसी के साथ वैसा ही बिहेव करना चाहिए कि कल को अगर ये यूनिवर्सल प्रिंसिपल बन गया और सब मेरे साथ भी वैसे ही बिहेव कर रहे हैं, सो आई एम कंफर्टेबल विद दैट. दैट इज हाउ आई शुड act only according to principles you could will. Okay, you could will to be, you would want to be universal laws. That is what he had said. So this is called moral universalism. And he said the opposite of what Machiavelli said. ये Machiavelli के बिल्कुल opposite बोले, treat people as ends, not as means. Okay, never treat them as means. That's what he said. So this is called moral absolutism. In an absolute sense, people are ends, not means. Right? So, categorically बोला था, बहुत clearly बोला था, categorical imperative, the way we should act. Right? So, this is about morality. Kant also talked a lot about morality. He even said, attempts to prove God's existence are a waste of time. But why? Tell me. Yes. This tells me that Priyanshu is solving RC passages, and I'm sure this must have benefited you in terms of background knowledge of these philosophers, and also in the ease with which you solve philosophy RCs. बताइए ये क्यों भाई, ये क्यों wasted time है? Attempts to prove God's existence as per Kant. Because हम तो limited है ना. Our faculties, our reason, our observation faculties, they are limited, right? We may never be able to know God as the thing in itself, right? So attempts to prove God's existence are a waste of time. They could be beyond us, beyond our capacity. And that's why he said that, it is okay, it is not irrational to believe in something that cannot be proven either way. जब हम किसी चीज़ को प्रूव ही नहीं कर सकते, हमारी फैकल्टी, हमारी कैपेसिटी लिमिटेड है उसको प्रूव करने की, तो अगर हम उसमें बिलीव करते हैं विदाउट एविडेंस, विदाउट प्रूफ, दैट यू कांट कॉल इरैशनल, क्योंकि हमारी रैशनलिटी के तो बियॉन्ड ही है ना वो, तो उसको रैशनल इरैशनल बोल ही नहीं सकते. सो इट्स नॉट इरैशनल. दैट्स व्हाट ही सेड. टू बिलीव इन समथिंग, फॉर एग्जाम्पल गॉड, दैट कैन नॉट बी प्रूवन आइदर वे. राइट? So this is Immanuel Kant for you. Interesting guy. And he synthesized rationalism and empiricism. And actually, if you notice, we use both in our lives. Because Kant ने ये भी बोला ना, देखो 2+2 वाला ही एग्जाम्पल ले लेते हैं. So Kant said, देखो पहली बार तो ठीक है, आपने ऑब्जर्व करा, आपने देखे कुछ ऑब्जेक्ट्स, आपने उनको ग्रुप करा, ये 2 हैं, ये 2 हैं, फिर आपने एडिशन लगाया उस पर. सो in the first instance, yes, you observed, but after that you don't need this every time, right? Do I need to observe it every time in order to say 2+2 is equal to 4? क्या मैं 4 ऑब्जेक्ट्स ढूंढने चली जाती हूँ जब भी आप मुझसे 2+2 पूछते हो? No, right? So later on you are able to apply your reason. So he said we work through both. Okay. Oh, nice. I am happy, Priyanshu, कि आपको मज़ा आया. ये हमारी लास्ट स्लाइड ऑफ द डे है. सो एनलाइटनमेंट का इम्पैक्ट क्या हुआ? एनलाइटनमेंट का इम्पैक्ट धीरे धीरे ये हुआ कि पहले तो हमने साइंस पर अप्लाई करी रैशनलिज्म, एम्पिरिसिज्म. सो बेसिकली साइंटिफिक रेवोल्यूशन आया. दिस पीरियड इज कॉल्ड साइंटिफिक रेवोल्यूशन बिकॉज इसमें काफ़ी सारी इन्वेंशंस हुई, राइट? एंड दिस एम्पिरिकल थॉट बिकेम वेरी पॉपुलर. ओके. एंड 18th सेंचुरी में हमारा इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन भी आ गया. Moreover, in this period of 17th and 18th century, a lot of political revolutions also happened. So it's basically a period of revolution. Scientific, political, industrial. Everything witnessed a revolution. So political revolutions, why? Because people also started questioning the authority of the government. कि हम क्यों इनको अथॉरिटी दे रहे हैं अपने ऊपर? क्या लॉजिक है? Right? Why should we allow a monarchy to govern ourselves? So it applied this reason to society. Ideas such as liberty, equality, secularism. Hobbes and Rousseau, Thomas Hobbes, Jacques Rousseau, इन्होंने बोला कि हम इसलिए एक गवर्नमेंट को अपने ऊपर रूल करना अलाउ करते हैं बिकॉज इफ लेट्स से वी डोंट अलाउ अ गवर्नमेंट टू रूल अस, द सोसाइटी माइट have a lot of crime, violence. It might be thrown into chaos. That's why we allow a sovereign, a government, to govern us. But Rousseau said that this should be based on the general will of the people, that this rule should not be against the will of the people, it should be based on their general will. You should actually give space to freedom, liberty, equality, such ideas. I'm sorry for my pen. You should give space to such ideas. That's what Rousseau said. So Hobbes and Rousseau talked about this social contract theory. I am sure इस पे भी RC किसी ना किसी ने पढ़ा होगा, right? Because I have read an RC on this. Okay, and Voltaire was quite a hip guy, quite a popular guy also, because he advocated for freedom of speech, freedom of religion, quite a reformer, right? In fact, a lot of comedians also cite Voltaire, because we are increasingly in an atmosphere when comedians are arrested for saying anything even mildly political, okay, or even mildly offensive. So Voltaire said that, I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend to death your right to say it. So they cite Voltaire. And he believed in tolerance and social reform. He likes to write. He wrote the Treaty of Tolerance. He likes the freedom of religion. He's smart. Be like Voltaire. Okay. And Adam Smith, I'm sure all of you who have read economics at some point in their lives know this guy, the father of economics, right? Adam Smith. Okay. Which one? Voltaire, or which one is pronounced with an H? I am bad with pronunciations, especially of French and a lot of Western people. So, Adam Smith actually sowed the seeds of modern capitalism. Capitalism, as we know today, ये इनकी contribution है इसमें. He said that government ना उसको इतना interfere मत कर, उसको नहीं करना चाहिए इतना interfere. Just let it, be involved in the areas of defense, in the areas of justice. Beyond that, just leave economics to people. Laissez-faire economics. He talked about this. An economy of minimum interference from the government. That's what he talked about. And that gave rise to our modern capitalism. पढ़ना इसके बारे में बहुत सारा क्रिटिक भी है, ऑफ कोर्स, एडम स्मिथ का, कैपिटलिज्म का. एंड वील टॉक अबाउट दिस मोर इन आवर सेशंस ऑन पॉलिटिकल फिलॉसफी. ठीक है, तो जब वो करेंगे तब इसके बारे में और बात करेंगे हम. सो रीजन शेप्स पॉलिटिक्स एंड डेली लाइफ, ये इम्पैक्ट हुआ एनलाइटनमेंट का. ठीक है, so far so good. So this is what we have discussed today. We have tried to cover these ages, and I have still not covered the modern period with you. Now you have two choices, and I prefer the former, which is that modern philosophers, I'm giving you a source, right? It's a very, very simple source. It states in very simple words the ideas of various philosophers. So various modern philosophers, they are also mentioned on this website. It's called philosophybasics.com. Now will you go and read about these philosophers there? Philosophers like Nietzsche, philosophers like Sartre and Derrida, right? So will you go to this website and read about them? That way we can then move to a session on another genre, probably political philosophy, probably art. Tell me. Otherwise I'll have to bring a part 3. Okay then, so modern philosophers are your homework, right? And go and read about them. You can also take the help of ChatGPT if you want to, right? And in the next session, next week, I will talk about some other essential terms. On Friday, you have a session with me. You have a 2-hour session with me from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. There, yes, I can bring finance or investment and philosophy. I have noted economics, philosophy. Okay. And here also finance, investment. Noted. Okay? Alright, yes, you can actually read it in Sophie's World, but in case, let's say, Sophie's World feels too much, in that case, this website is there. Right? Okay then, I'll see you next time. This was it from my side. Thank you for being so patient. I know it's a lot to listen to somebody for such a long time. Bye bye. Welcome. See you.